All right, and we are recording. There we go. Thanks for clicking play. Welcome back to Cerebral Threads. I'm back with Paul, and today we're going to debate minimum wage laws. I think they should be abolished, and I'm pretty sure he's taking the other side.
Yes.
But tonight I have to start out with an apology to a friend of both mine and Paul's named Spencer Nelson, whose name I accidentally said last week when I meant to say Richard Spencer is the guy who, there's a video of the Nazi who got punched in the face and kind of started the meme of punch a Nazi in the face about 2 or 3 years ago. It just came out. I said Spencer Nelson instead of Richard Nelson, and I want to apologize to Spencer, although he may never even see this. But I would like to apologize and say I did not mean you. You are not a Nazi. In fact, you're a very good guy. Okay, there we go. We'll get back to that. And also, reminder, when we're doing these, I announce it live on Facebook. And if you ever want to jump in, even to just cheer or boo or put your 2 cents in the chat, or if you want to hop on and jump into the conversation with us, you are more than welcome. You send me a message on Facebook or text. I can send you email with the invite, and we'll get you in here. It's a little loose format as of yet, but how many we can get going at once, I'm not sure, but we're going to experiment to see how many people we can get going at once without it being too confusing. Okay, that's all wrapped up. On to minimum wage laws. We didn't really talk about a setup for a debate, so I just figured we won't worry too much about time. We got plenty of time, just you and me, so if you would like to drag on about a point, feel quite welcome.
Cool.
But I thought we'd start out just with a general thoughts on minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a little introduction. I thought I'd let you go first, unless you're not comfortable.
You know, I think it's semi-self-explanatory. I think, you know, it empowers people to do a base minimum in society of what you can live on. Cost of living, I didn't see in a single state that was less than $15 an hour. So I think something like a $15 an hour minimum wage to make sure that you have your basic necessities, I think is fair.
Okay. One of my objections is on a moral basis, and I guess that addresses it just being fair. I don't agree that it's fair just from on a basic level of taxation and taking money from many people and just handing it out. You're basically giving me my money back if I've put in, and people who haven't put in the same way are getting more out. So that in itself doesn't seem fair. So calling it fair seems, I guess it feels fair to the people getting the money who need it, but it's not going to feel fair to people who don't need it, or that's a marginal cost on them. But the extra taxes we're going to have to pay for something like that, unless you can talk, you know, huge amounts of the federal budget to switch to that, I guess. But even then, it's still morally, I don't think there's really an argument for it as much as there's a feel-good virtue type feeling that people get for saying it's just fair, as opposed to having a real moral flat principle on what's fair or not.
We're talking about minimum wage or taxation?
Oh, are minimum wages you're talking about going to be paid for by someone else? I mean, I think, right.
Yeah. Please explain. What do you mean by minimum wage is taxation or disconnection?
Oh.
Please explain.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm off on UBI. I'm sorry. I totally started arguing a different point.
Okay. All right.
In my head, I was looking at my notes and I started some for our next two, and I looked down and I have the wrong piece of paper slid next to me. And that's why I was like,
Cool.
Doesn't make sense. What? Oh, right. Sorry, my fault. But still the same moral argument, but for minimum wage, I think it's also unfair to not allow somebody the freedom to work for whatever wage they want. I mean, you say it's fair, but what if I want to be able to take someone else's job by offering a lower rate? But if I deal with that transaction with somebody, we both get in trouble. Maybe we just get fined, but if I continue to do it, eventually I'll be fined again and put in jail for being willing to work for a lesser wage. That's my freedom to choose an association with somebody else in an interaction. So mandating amount doesn't seem fair in that sense either, because again, you're taking away my right to choose a wage.
I mean, that's an interesting view of it. I don't, not sure how you get there. My right to work for less?
Correct.
I feel no need to worry about that right. Whatever.
Okay.
Whatever.
I
have no moral problem with forcing you to get paid a minimum wage. Sorry.
I gotcha. But what if I can't get a job because it's 15, but I could get a job if it was $14.50? What if my skills aren't up to $15, so I never get hired? That's not fair.
You need a minimum wage to survive. So allowing you to work for less and not make that minimum wage has rippling effects all across society. This is slicing hairs at best. No, a $15 minimum wage. We can handle it. You're not going to work less. You're fine.
You will work less. I mean,
There's no evidence of that. You could.
There's no evidence of that.
None.
All right. Well, I have read evidence of that, and I will make sure I get it to you.
But do you have like compared states?
Okay. Do I have what?
Do you have like states that didn't raise their minimum wage compared to states that have in terms of hours lost? Because even when they have cities side to side that one raises minimum wage, they don't have these issues. Minimum wage is so far below the standard of living and inflation for the last 30 years. It just doesn't have those effects. It could. I don't think it does.
I got you. Well, minimum wages have been used in the past to stop, in particular, minority workers from undercutting established workers. It's something that's happened a few times, and in fact, minimum wages, even originally here in the United States, were to keep a lot of the black carpenters and other construction workers from outbidding businesses in the North. So one of the ways they kept and kind of destroyed the whole construction business in the South was by putting in minimum wage laws and a lot of the other protectionist union laws that we a lot of them we still have today, and some of them are even worse, were put into place on purpose to keep blacks out of the work market. And now with people pushing for it again, you're going to do that again. It's going to have the same effect, but I guess, but for better intentions.
I have no idea why you feel that the minimum wage was made to keep black people out of jobs. I don't see that connection one bit. How did you get that? I mean, the union didn't allow black people in there for a very long time. That was definitely tough for black people, and that was definitely shitty. But the minimum wage was made to keep black people out. How'd you get that?
I've read papers about it and histories about it, and in particular the people writing the laws pointing that out. It also happened in South Africa. The white farmers and construction workers put in, again, minimum wage laws to keep the African workers from outbidding them and taking their jobs. The ability to take a lower wage than somebody who's more skilled than you is a basic way that people with less skills compete with people with skills. And if you take that away, you don't give them their ability to underbid people with more skill. And when you do have systems that allow that, you end up not only bringing down your higher union house prices, but you also then slowly increase the prices of the lower bidders too. And you end up getting to a place where you find out what the actual price for the job is, because the two put pressure on each other towards a more equilibrium price in that market if you allow it to happen, which we don't with minimum wage laws and other union laws.
Yeah, I think you described the basic supply side economics. I think you've replaced will for could, and almost everything you said there, and many of it can go the other way. The idea that economics is an exact science is just not true. There's all kinds of economics and economic theorists that are really good, really intelligent, that 100% disagree with what you're saying.
True.
No, no, the minimum laws were not have anything to do with keeping black people out of work. That's just not historically accurate. Show a lot of proof on that if that's something you're going to say. That is not what happened with minimum wage. That was
other than
voting for it, it being
other than
on tickets and people also winning on those. And to say that that's keeping black people out without proof is, I don't tell you.
Well, I mean, I could say the same thing. I mean, you just said no, that's not true. That's not really proof. So I mean, I could say the same thing. Well, I'll get you some info on that, and you can tell if
well, I mean, you're just saying basic
agree with
theories.
it or not.
Oh, sorry.
I thought I just that is. I thought that was one that was well known and documented, so I wasn't feeling
absolutely
like
not.
absolutely,
Absolutely
not.
Your
Yeah,
economics.
I got you.
Oh, absolutely not.
I got you. Okay. Could be that I live in an economics bubble.
No, you live in a very specific economics bubble.
Which one is that? What do you mean?
You're very supply side economics and very libertarian. You're very free market. That's not
yes,
economics as a whole. That's specific economics for sure.
It's Austrian school economics is that what you mean? Austrian school economics with praxeology,
yes.
Yeah, as opposed to the Keynesian economics that our current system runs on with MMT, modern monetary theory.
We're closer to a laissez-faire economics, if anything.
Huh. All right. I got you. This is one of those where I wish you were true. I mean, I wish you were right, but we're a pretty mixed economy now. I think we were more laissez-faire in the past. But the last 50, 60 years has been a real damage to the free market. And in particular, since like the early 1900s when the Federal Reserve was really brought in. So calling this a free market it's the freest market, I'll give you that. It is the freest market on the planet, but it's barely laissez-faire anymore.
We're definitely not a true free market. No, I don't think you could have one if you're going to mix it with any kind of government or any kind of group of people. You know,
a free market.
Not true capitalist. We're not true socialist. You know, all those things have varying degrees. I would say we're more laissez-faire than anything else, for sure.
All right. And just to go back, I don't think economics is a exact science, and for the most part, especially since the early 90s, in particular like 1993, since two economists, Card and Kruger, came out and really made popular the monopsony wage model, there has been since then a big push in literature refuting what was thought of as far as the competitive wage model that's been taught in Economics 101. It's really only been wholly refuted with literature since like the early 1990s. So at this point, you really can find hundreds of papers out there now on both sides arguing many parts of the different issue on the minimum wage. So if you look at economics as just a straight numbers game, and you can start writing down graphs and numbers and whatnot, and fancy letters and fancy equations, then I think that would be people who are like you are saying economics is an exact science. I don't think it's an exact science. It's I think it's a sociology science. Is that right? Anyways, it's not in like the math or science. So we're not talking about exactness as far as economic laws in theory. Does that make sense? So I'm just telling you that so you understand. I don't think economics is an exact science, and it's not the way I learned economics.
Okay, we agree.
There you go. Why are you okay with just saying no to somebody else's freedom to be able to work for less? Why does that make you just immediately dismiss it and say, no, I don't care? You know, I'm not giving you that right to work for less. I think it's wrong. I think there's no literature. There's no proof for that. And I don't care what you want with your life. You don't have that freedom. I am going to enforce on you a minimum wage. Why do you think you have that right? I don't get that attitude.
I mean, that's possibly the most slanted way I've ever heard that put.
Okay.
Are you kidding me? No, minimum wage is out there to help people and to protect people. They don't have a lot of power as the individual fighting companies or bosses or owners. And then for you to throw this into some opposite world of like, oh, you're hurting my rights. There's so many more rights that those people need. They need better health care. They need better pay. There's all kinds of things you can do for workers if you're worried about rights or morality. But to fight for the ability for these people to get taken advantage of and then hide behind some idea that it's moral, absolutely not. I think your question is silly, and the way you put it was silly.
All right. See, I think there is power in the ability to undercut someone else so I can get their job. That is my power. And if there's many of us, we can, as like a group, be a construction team that'll underbid you by $400 or $500 just so we can get that job. If you start putting in laws about how much people can make, you take that away, which is something people do in business already. Why on this in particular people don't agree? I don't understand. I mean, if one business comes to town and they're brand new and they have no customers, so they decide to undercut the other businesses, why is that any different? if I come in and contract for less. It's not an hourly wage, but I can come in as a set price and then pay my workers, unfortunately, less than minimum.
I understand paying
right?
workers less and the benefits. I 100% what you're saying about that's a benefit to pay your workers less.
No,
I
that's
get
not
it.
what I said. No,
That's exactly what you said.
No.
But here's my counter to
I
that.
said to
That
the,
is
no,
silliness.
wait, let me just, I did not say it's a benefit to be able to pay your workers less. What I said is there's power for the workers to be able to offer minimum prices, a crew decision together,
I think
saying
it's
we'll underbid them, we'll all have to take less than they make, but we will get the job in future jobs. That's different than you saying, acting like what I said was that way bosses get to pay less, and that's good. Talk about twisting what somebody said.
It's just, that's what I'm hearing out of that is just bosses like to pay less. Good for them. If you're going to look for power for workers, look for powers of unionizing and demanding better treatment, demanding better safety. Demand all these things and have some real power. But the idea that we're going to flip it around and act like the minimum wage is an unpowering item, no, I'm not falling for it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with unions. And I don't think there's anything wrong with workers getting together and making demands of their employees. I mean, all the way back to friendly societies. But that's different than the government mandating laws on behalf of unions that won't let people decide what they want for a wage. You act as if employers are the only ones who decide wages, that employees never have any power or ability to affect their own wage. And that's just not true.
I didn't say none, I said less.
So less is automatically wrong?
Much less, yes.
Much less, and that's wrong.
So instead, they vote in people that get a minimum wage done. Yeah, it is different from a union to have a politician do it, but it's still getting voted in. It's still a good idea if all the people want it, right? Even by your own definition. They're saying a union is good for workers to get together, and if people get together and demand this wage, that's their bargaining power. It's even better than that one company that tried to screw someone else over to cheapen their labor. This is even better. It's a group. So be it.
I'd agree if the people that the union was discussing with and bargaining with were the owners of the business and not the government, who then mandates laws with them as a separate party on them. It's a different scenario. That is not the same scenario. One is forcing you. And if you think everybody likes that, again, I just think you're wrong. Not everybody likes that. That's why union membership is so low.
But they're still voting in the minimum wage.
Well, sure. And free lunch and Coke and candy in the vending machine. Polling the general public for what they would like for free is not a way of determining what is good policy. That's probably the worst way to decide policy.
I think there's massive differences between asking for a livable wage and Coke, candy, and the other things you just laughed about.
Okay, I think you missed my point, but okay. So you just don't, okay. Yeah, so it's just silly and you're not going to address it. All right.
I mean, I addressed it. What else is there to address?
Okay, all right. I also think unemployment or minimum wage laws also cause unemployment, two types of unemployment. Not only do some businesses have to fire, but there's also tons of people who never get a job at all that aren't even on the unemployment rolls. So there's an invisible group that ends up getting hurt, as well as an obvious effect that you can quantify in some ways within statistics of our Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name. I almost said BML.
Yeah, I think once again, yeah, it can happen. Raising the minimum wage can lead to less employment or less hours. It can do those things, but it doesn't. So far, it hasn't. The stats I've seen, when states neighboringly, one raises minimum wage, there is no increase in unemployment. When we raise minimum wage in Chicago, we don't see these upticks in unemployment that would match. I think I think minimum wage is so low that even though raising minimum wage could affect these things, it's so low it just doesn't, and we're going to have to get it much further up before we're going to see these effects you're worried about.
Which effects?
Unemployment, less hours.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you know how that was measured? As in, is it part of the group of more Keynesian or modern monetary theory groups that are using the monopsony model to measure that, and in particular restaurants or other monopoly type businesses? Is that where the positive effects you've read about come from? Because those are the only type models that I see that show any positive effect, even though it's really small. And that is pretty much the bulk of what's used on the pro minimum wage side. So I truly would like to know if what you're citing or talking about, if it was measured that way.
I don't know. I know there's two studies I read, one in Philadelphia, and I forgot where the other state was. And basically it was just crunching the data of, here were two close cities. One was from separate states. One was from the same state. One raised minimum wage. One didn't. What the effects? And there really wasn't any.
I gotcha.
I'll try and post it when you post it, the links to the two articles.
I gotcha.
Because I think your theory makes sense. It's just not happening right now. The minimum wage is so low, it doesn't have that effect.
I think that's possibly the study that they actually got a different result than what they put out, and they corrected for weather because they thought that because of the really bad weather in one state screwed up their polling in their data set. So they put their own added to that to give it a little up based on their assumptions about weather. And it sounds like the one, the state to state, it sounds like the one that has been criticized by a lot of people just because they made their own condition as opposed to just measuring it and then saying, oh, and by the way, we think this low number is not against what our theory was, but we think we should add this much on because of weather. Pretty sure.
I'll post it. You can check it out.
Cool. That's cool. Can you put it up on here somewhere?
Right now,
I gotta
look it up.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I gotcha. Cool. Well, we'll do 2 of these. That'll be fun. Maybe that's how we should always do these, so that we don't have to feel like we got to get a 4 binders of ready information. I do have that. As opposed to, I'm writing some of these things down, and then I will go and we could do this again too, and I will look up some of the things you're saying, in particular those articles. So we'll make a deal to send each other info after.
And you know what? People might enjoy getting involved in that more than actually being on.
Okay. Yeah, who knows? Okay. I think also, I think it really I think it does disadvantage the least skilled. And that's not just minorities. That's also, older people, people with disabilities, and in particular teenagers. And one of the reasons I think it should, that supports that, is the reason, or is the fact that so many places that have minimum wages carve out exceptions for certain groups. It's almost to me like an admittal that that is different, and you need to be able to pay teenagers a little less. Therefore, we're going to carve this out too, as well as I find it hard to believe that the unions aren't sometimes using it in bad ways too. They push for these type like closed shop laws, minimum wage laws, and so on and so forth. They get them passed through the government, and then they try to also get carve-outs for themselves, so that they can also have a lower wage group of union workers that they can now start using in some of what used to be just minimum wage jobs where there was no unions because it was all teenagers. Have you noticed that there are exceptions that basically cover the people that I say there's a problem with it about?
That varies greatly from state to state.
Yes.
Can you be more specific?
All of them. All of those carve-outs say to me that they recognize that it affects teenagers and people with low skill groups poorly when you do the minimum wage. So they have to make carve-outs of different types in different countries and different states to accommodate the fact that there is an effect negative to teenagers and low skilled workers.
Once again, it's a theory. I would like to hear how many people are you even talking about? Because when I look about what minimum wage raising would do, it's mostly not teenagers that it goes up on. So I just don't see the evidence for what you're saying. It's a theory. I get it. I don't think it bears out in the numbers, and therefore I don't think your theory's right. A minimum wage helps teenagers, adults, whatever. And we have a lot of unskilled jobs that need to be filled, and we don't have enough teenagers for that. If you look at the age groups that is going to be affected when you raise it to $15 an hour, they're not teenagers. They're not a majority teenagers. It's mostly working moms.
Yes, this is true. And
so I think accepting working moms and saying, hey, working mom, can I make you work for less? Will you agree to it? Probably a working mom could maybe work for less because she's got no power. She's a working mom. She doesn't have time to join a union, stick up for herself. So she votes in a minimum wage. Good for her. I would say stop all those exceptions that let teenagers get paid less.
It's in particular been since like the mid 80s, 90s that the shift in the workforce and a lot of our minimum wage jobs, in particular restaurants, we've been noticing the change to more older people, to the point where it seems like family people, moms, dads. That has happened over the last 4 decades because of minimum wage laws and other type laws that make it more expensive to hire an employee. So they started shifting the workforce from teenagers that you can't depend on to good, already skilled older people. And the job was more attractive to older people who normally would be looking for a different type job. They start filling in the entry-level jobs because now they're worth $15 an hour. Again, removing the teenagers from that first step of learning about a job, getting your work ethic down, arriving on time, dressing right. There's some real basic skills that happen in that entry-level job. And when we create $15 an hour or force insurance or any of these type of rules, you make those jobs more valuable for an employer to give to an older, more experienced worker, and you make them more valuable for that experienced worker so that they will move in and take the job. So I think it supports what I'm saying.
I mean, it just seems like you're taking whatever's norm and switching around with the same evidence. It's just, I don't buy it. I think automation took all these jobs. I don't buy that there's all these hard, good-working people that want industrial jobs, but they're like, what? McDonald's is paying so much. Oh, hell no. I don't want to go into IT. I don't want to be a fireman. I don't want to be a policeman. I don't want to work for Ford. I don't want to do all these other jobs. I want to work for McDonald's because the money's so damn good. I don't see it.
Well, it could be, like you said, lots of single moms who need a job part-time or that is flexible enough for them to get back to their kids, and they just don't have the time. And they just don't have the time to become scientists and firemen and policemen and all those great jobs.
That's definitely what the stat says. People making under the $15 minimum wage are. I think it's 57% women.
Right. Yeah, they're taking teenagers' jobs. What? Sure. In automation, again, we're making employees so expensive that it's creating automation to appear. It didn't used to be cost effective to create the robot or the kiosk, but as each employee becomes more expensive and as inflationary prices start hitting and everything starts getting more expensive and there's a demand for higher and higher wages, then you make it a wise financial choice for an employer to stop using humans and just use machines. Again, it's just going to lead to less jobs overall.
Again, you took the horse and threw it way in front of the cart or way behind the cart. No. During slavery, they invented the cotton gin. There's nothing cheaper than slaves, and they still had an invention so good it was cheaper. Automation is 10 times, 20 times, 100 times better than a single human being. There is no minimum wage to stop automation. Automation is that good, that important. For you to flip-flop that is just trying to make yourself, that's just trying to fit into your theory. That's ridiculous. The cotton gin was made during slavery. What cheaper labor was there?
Okay. One invention. All right. That doesn't change anything that I said. That doesn't change what I said.
It does. It's the exact contrary to what you're saying, that we're raising wages and that's what's bringing automation. Absolutely not. Automation is going to happen by itself. Wages getting too high does not affect that. It may affect it a little bit.
It does.
I'll give you that. Maybe it's not, but absolutely not.
It is an effect. It is an effect. I said, and other things that are making employees expensive, like healthcare, higher minimum wage, taxes on employers, taxes on all of these things have made them more cost effective to start moving to more machinery. And machinery isn't always 100 million times better. That's not true. And there's plenty of jobs that you still need humans for anyway. So this is just kind of like, you're just making that up, And animation is 100 times better than a human being, and that's why they do it. That doesn't really have a good flow of reasoning behind it, as opposed to saying, hey, you've made a human being so expensive, now machines make more sense. And what I keep saying is cost, not the characteristics you keep bringing up, that it's 100 times better. And you said something else that I forgot, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Not that I thought it was 1,000,000 times better.
Right. Okay. But I don't think they're saying they're 10 times, 4 times. You can't say they're 10 times better than a human. They're cheaper is the point. That's the point I'm making. And it doesn't matter how much.
Fair. Whatever. Okay.
All right. Okay. So, those, I had most of my list, so it sounds like, I'll go back over it. For the moral reasons, it sounds like you're not buying, or you don't agree with, because I don't know. I still don't get that. How
I don't
you
think
get
there is.
past how you get past forcing someone to not be able to work for the price they want. How do you get
That
past
just
that?
seems to be a chip on your shoulder about you can't make me, you can't make me. You live in a society. We vote these things in. You can't. There's just a chip on your shoulder. Me being forced to do something by the group is teamwork. I'm okay with it at times. There are definitely things that I think as an individual I have rights to. The right to work for the least amount possible is not a right I care about, not even a little bit. And for you to frame that in a moral thing, I don't think is a category that theory should be dipped into. Having enough money to feed yourself, live. After 40 hours, you should not be unable to find a home, to find health care, to find food. That's ridiculous. And to say that this is a moral question because somebody has the right not to.
Explain why.
It's silly.
Explain why somebody has a right to all that.
I didn't say they had a right. I said
Well,
they don't
must.
have a right to
No,
work for
they
less.
must.
No,
they must have a right to that if you get to dictate that they get this amount of wage so that they can cover this, this, and this. Then you're saying they have a right to all of those things, and we get to use the force of the law, the force of the government, to force everybody who doesn't agree with me into that as a moral right.
I didn't
that
say
doesn't
right.
make sense.
You said right. I don't care about right. Throw right away. You love to focus on that. Screw the right. This is a group of people voting in that they want a minimum wage because it's the best thing. They're wildly popular. They win very easily. It is what it is. You lost the election. You don't get to pay people crap wages.
So if a law is voted in, therefore it's moral? It's ethical, it's right?
No.
Okay. Then how is getting to force 49% of the country to have to do what 51% wants? That's
a minimum wage is wildly popular, not 51 to 49.
Sure. Sure.
Secondly, you're the one that keeps trying to.
I'll go back to the candy. Of course, minimum wage is popular. It's like a high school class president. I will put candy and Coke in the vending machine. Of course, everyone's going to vote for that. If you poll everyone about a lot of different things that have the word free or extra in it, they're going to say, yeah, I think I should get that. That's not a valid poll for what people want or what policies should be.
I must disagree with you on this one. I don't like the fact that you're comparing people fighting to live what basic necessities are to popularity and Cokes and this other shit you're talking about in high school. I think this is a really inappropriate comparison. Absolutely not. This is not some silly populist thing. This is I want to work and have enough money to eat, to live, to these things. It's not. Absolutely not. It's not remotely close to those two things. It's not just some silly populist thing. Absolutely not.
No. I'm not saying it itself is silly. What I'm saying is looking at that type of response from people as proof is silly. I don't think that the fact that people want a minimum wage is silly itself. It completely makes sense. That's a lot of very normal people saying, of course I want my wage to go up, especially, you know, if there is no understanding of the people you're asking on what that really means in the negative. Of course everyone will say that. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. It sure sounded like you were comparing wanting a living wage to a class president screaming out they want sugary drinks. That sounded like what your comparison was.
Right, analogy, but
yeah, and I think it's a bad one because one of those things is very important to living and the other is just high school stuff. That's not comparison.
I
It's not,
gotcha.
no, absolutely not. You're trying to act like these things are just some silly populace. This
So
isn't
you're
just some silly populism.
so
This
you're
is
very
living. This
specific.
is a living wage. Not a single state is under $30,000 for a living wage.
What's your point? Somebody made
Minimum
up a
wage of
line.
$15 an hour
Somebody made
makes
up
it
a
that you can
line.
survive.
No, somebody made up a line and called it the living wage. And now your side stands on it like it's written in one of the tablets. It's just a calculation somebody made.
And there's definitely yeah, I think you definitely have flexibility on what you're going to call what you need to survive. So if you're saying, hey, Paul, I think there should be more fluidity in the living wage, okay. But for you to say that the living wage shouldn't even be considered because you think one side of the aisle is playing with the numbers, what? Is that real? Like what? You can't come to a living wage? You don't think a living wage is something people can figure out or at least get close to?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to have to really work on my communication skills with the way you interpret the things I say. Or you're just hearing it one way over and over. One or the other. No. No, I just don't think that because something is popular, therefore you get to force it on the minority. It's the basic tyranny of the minority. I don't think 51% getting to tell 49% what wage they can have, how many hours they can work, how many dogs they can have, or any of the numerous things that are legislated. I just don't believe that.
I don't think trying to fight for living wage is anywhere extreme, on the edge, nothing. It's the basic reason you even have a government. This is why we have elections. Minimum wage is easily.
No, it's why we have a republic.
And morality. I think it's silly.
No, the tyranny of the majority. A democracy is not what we have. We have a republic because we are not supposed to be voting on these types of issues as a public, as some sort of popular vote. Everybody gets to vote. Do we get blue ties or red ties? 51% get to make 49% wear a different color tie. That was not the point of this country. It is what I think those on your side of the argument for minimum wage believe. I don't know about you, but I don't believe that just saying it's democracy, therefore it's right, is true. Democracy it is also a tyranny.
As that may be, this is not that subject that comes remotely close to tyranny or anything remotely close. This is exactly why you have a democracy, a democratic republic. We vote in individuals, they make decisions. That's what democratic republic is. The constitutional democracy is the one that protects the individual rights, like our Bill of Rights, and so be it. We have a blend. It's an interesting blend. It always needs work. But to compare the push for minimum wage to tyranny is ridiculous when there's so much real tyranny out there you could focus on.
I think anything that's interfering with the basic rights of Americans is a pretty big tyranny. I know you don't see it that way, but I think maybe that's part of the divide on this issue, is that I do see it as a serious tyranny if part of this country is going to vote that I cannot choose to work for a lesser wage. And I know you don't respect that, but there are many people in the world that would like to be able to choose. And if you use your power of popular vote to force me to do it, that's tyranny. That's where the tyranny comes in.
I mean, I've heard this argument before. All government is tyranny, all taxes are taxation. The taxation's been around since the first government. Governments exist, they're natural, they're built by the people. Even if you don't like the direction they may go in. So was
slavery, and we stopped. So was slavery, and we stopped. Not an argument.
What was slavery?
Something that all governments had since the beginning of time. Just because
Absolutely
it's been
not.
around,
Not all governments
just
had
because
slavery
it's
since the beginning of time. Absolutely not.
just because it's been around for a long time is not an argument.
All right. I mean, that's once again just throwing out the extreme, but we're an entire society that's based on what we've done before. It's called knowledge. You build on it. There's two extremes you can throw out there. Whatever.
That's not an argument
Taxation's
either.
been around for a while. It's legal. It's basic. All governments need taxation. It's silliness to think taxation is people stealing your money. That's just libertarian. I don't know what to tell you. It's silliness. Roads, all these things you go, oh, I want those, I want those, I want those, what they're paid for by taxes. We are a group. It is what it is.
Do you think we could get all of those things done without the government and just pay fees for those things that we want? You don't think we could group together and that without the glue of government, things like roads wouldn't get done? You know, they hire us, the people, to actually do that stuff, right? None of them know how to do it.
If that was a great system, that would be what we have right now. Governments are natural. You're once again grabbing the cart, throwing it way in front of the horse. Are you kidding me? Governments are natural. They exist because when people did just own it for themselves, it was called feudalism, and it sucked, and we didn't like it, and we overthrew it. No, no. The individual, all working alone, can't beat the team. Sorry, teamwork helps. You know, look at the Marvel universe. It sucked till we had an overarching guy, and we had like 14 good movies.
I think if you think they've just put out 14 good movies, there's something wrong with you. Anyways.
There were some good movies in there, sir.
No, I lost my train of thought. There are so bad movies. Just because it happens naturally, again, that's not an argument for it being moral or right or our government.
If it keeps happening naturally, why not? Because that not every government's had slavery, not every government's had these things, but there are trends in government. Government usually does go buy roads and guarantee transactions, and there are definitely common things that all governments have done and you can study. But then to say that all history's off, all learning's off, because you can say, well, some things are bad, so screw it. No,
who said that?
All right off
who said that?
As something we can't. You did.
Is that a straw man behind you? Is that a straw man in the corner?
All right.
I didn't say that. I mean, cancer is natural. There's tons of things that are natural that we try to fight and stop. Our own emotions, the way things happen in the world. I try to stop the natural growth of my grass. I try to stop the natural instincts of a lion from eating me. There's a lot about that happens natural. Just again, saying it's natural, therefore governments are good and necessary. I just asked, do you think it's possible for people without that government system to pay fees for the same thing? Couldn't a community pay for a firehouse without a government? And it sounds like you're saying, no, you don't think so. You think you need a government level umbrella system to get that sort of large stuff done, dams, roads, so on and so forth.
I'm going beyond that. Only am I saying, is it necessary? I'm saying history has proven it's necessary, that we have had small enclaves that didn't come together to build things, and they were taken over by cultures that got together and built big things. That's one of the reasons that certain cultures have done very well. That expansion, that teamwork. Rome was built and spread on government. Yes, government can be bad. Yes, government can be good. But you have to accept the fact that these naturally occur for a reason. There's a reason why these governments keep happening. And even though you can point out historical things that do happen often that are horrible. I don't think that disqualifies government or put government in the horrible situation because you can name the extremes. I'm not buying that argument.
Okay.
We have had many cultures start on feudalism where just the little group owns and tries their best, or the individuals throw to get money. It doesn't get things like the Hoover Dam done. It didn't get electricity to farms. It didn't get roads all across America. It didn't get railroads all across America. This was done by government help. If you want to say, hey, I think government should always combine like we do roads now, where we have federal money and state money and we buy individuals to do the roads, all right. But there's all kinds of systems. But
okay. No, I got you.
The non-government thing is silly.
I got you. All right. Well, I wrote a couple of these things we tangented off, and they'll be good topics for another day. So to just wrap up and bring it back to minimum wage, we found no common points. There we go. All right. Okay, so I guess maybe we'll come back to this sometime. I know there were some things I wanted to look up. I hope you send me those links. Was there anything that I brought up that you'd be interested in reading or learning more about?
Well, I did want to bring up some of the things that I read. That the national minimum wage, I think they're pushing for, is 2024. So it hasn't really come into effect. So if it is affecting us, positive or negative, I don't think we're going to see it till probably like 2024, 2026.
Well,
things I think are important.
Businesses will react. I mean, just because they're the slow arm of the government is going to do it in 2024 doesn't mean that all the businesses that are going to be affected by it from this day forward aren't making plans and adjusting their businesses starting right now to get there. More animation, start cutting training, start cutting Christmas parties. Let's not hire as much. Let's retain more workers and keep them in. So by 2024,
or the minimum wage is so low it doesn't have any of those effects. And
that's possible if inflation at this point gets so freaking bad because they're also destroying the dollar that it won't matter. Inflationary price will be so high, minimum wage will never catch up to it. Or we get deflation afterwards and then it'll drop below and it'll be higher than the competitive normal market wage. It'll go up and down based on that.
All right, so what do you think about the fact that like comparative productivity, starting in like the 40s and the 50s when we first started doing minimum wages, if productivity had matched minimum wage, they projected to be around $20 now.
How do they divide the productivity? I mean, if this is leading into the war, so I'm sure our manufacturing base was just churning out tanks and crap. So that doesn't really count if you're just measuring the numbers. You have to add in that we were at war. So if they had minimum wages, and on top of which there is lots of proof that what happened through the minimum wage laws and tariffs and price controls during the Great the Great Depression leading up to the World War, also were already hurting the economy, and the war basically saved it.
That's your interpretation. Absolutely not. The minimum wage was not what? Before the Depression?
And then all of 3, 4, 5 million troops left, and suddenly we got a big push into the workforce from women. So unemployment is super low. Wages are starting to go high because they need them. They're also borrowing money out the wazoo to keep paying people. And one of the reasons they're forcing in those laws, I'm just guessing by the time period that I'm just giving you other effects that could have affected numbers. Like, look, they put in this minimum wage here, no unemployment. And then ignoring the fact that there was a world war, a depression, and millions of people, or hundreds of thousands killed. Suddenly they all come back, and then we have a big old industrial boom because we got a bunch of trained soldiers come back. There's so much going on in there that you have to add that into any calculation. Then you have to add that into any calculation that's measuring the effect of the minimum wage through here. 50s, 60s,
you would
40s
you would
to
put
50s.
in all the effects that have happened in history for the last 60 years. I don't know why you're focusing on 1940 to 1943 as a weird
because you said
jump, and I'm not done. As a weird jump in pay when I'm talking between 1940 and 2020. That's over like 80 years. So yeah, there'll be ups and downs, but I don't understand why you're focusing on 1943, 44, 45.
Okay, yeah, I'm about to tell you. I don't think you said that second half. You said, and if you did, I didn't hear it. You said 1940, and I guess what you meant was between 1940 and 50, but you said 1940, 1950. And if you said till 2020 or till now, I missed that. So I was talking about the 10-year period between 1940 and 1950.
All right. Well, I mean, it's definitely something to focus on about why those 10 years were good. But I'm saying is productivity from back in the 40s till now, if the minimum wage had stuck up with productivity, it should be around $20 an hour.
Right, that was the first part. I think I gave 2 or 3 things that I said I wanted to be split between. And also I said the amazing industrial production that we kicked into because of the war, again, is because of the war, not because they raised the minimum wage. And then production afterward, and then production, and then production after.
That should help your argument then. If what I'm comparing to is a time we were super productive in the 1940s, getting out of World War II to now, then that should help your argument, not hurt it. I don't know why you keep bringing this up. If it was a bad economy, and we were starting in the 20s or the 30s, like in the middle of the Depression, I get what you mean. But all right, cool. So they had a good economy then. They had a lot of productivity in the 40s when we're starting this. Cool. Now in 2020, productivity is a lot better. Why isn't the wage up then?
Okay, when I start over this time, don't interrupt me after I talk about the 40s and 50s in industrial production. And I promise to continue talking all the way through 2020, like you're saying. Because of that industrial explosion in the 40s and 50s, it was the beginning of an industrial era that has continued all the way through, but in different businesses. That would have to be teased out of the production. You're saying all of that production, the employees aren't getting enough. But what if most of that production has to do with the capital material, the machines, and factories that are being provided for by the employer, and not that just they're getting better? Both is happening at the same time, but until you start figuring out what percentage of production increase is from the machines, what part of the production increase is from higher level management strategies, employment strategies, physical brain techniques that make workers faster or not, as opposed to from that time period, the American worker has gotten so much more skilled. So you would have to tease that out. And I bet that the proportion that someone else would look at and say, this part should go to the employee, is definitely lower than what people think. But that's for other reasons as well, as opposed to if I increase the minimum wage, therefore that production gap would disappear and the employees would be getting the same percentage of the production increase that they should be during any of those time periods, I would imagine.
But wouldn't that be reflected then in less profits? If productivity was matched with just the cost of the factory and all these things, and it wasn't just profit, wouldn't profit stay the same or get less if what you're saying is true?
All other factors solid, I guess is what you're saying. I'm not quite. Ask the question again.
You're saying that just because productivity is up, it doesn't mean that should have gone to the workers, because maybe it was a cost in all the equipment and things like that. Isn't that what you said? Am I misinterpreting that?
Right. I said you would have to figure out, you would have to be able to separate that out and then figure out how much, not just the cost of the machine, but if I install a machine that lets you do the same job you've been doing faster so that we get more production, who is adding that extra production? Is it you because you're a worker, or are you still just stamping something? But I figured out a better tool. I've paid for a better tool. I've given you another method. I've put in a trainer that makes you more productive at the same skill. How do you tease that out when you're trying to decide how much more in wages the employees should have gotten based on all this great increase in general production? To just look at the general production and say the employee's missing out on a lot is not using any of the other metrics you would use to say this is how we increased productivity.
I think what you're describing, that kind of detailed analysis, means we'd have to look at every single industry, try to get down to each factory, each thing, and work it out. I don't think you have to do that. I think you can look at the numbers I'm talking about that show productivity raising and that profits are raising. And it seems all across the board, that is exactly what's happening. Profits from corporations are at a much higher trajectory than workers, and productivity seems to be matching that higher profit. So I would say that is how you can do it without getting involved in every single factory and trying to work out all those things. I'm not saying you shouldn't work out all the things you've just discussed, but for this discussion, I'm pretty confident in saying the extreme rise in profit and the extreme rise in production and not the rise in pay equals what I'm saying.
So you think if you raise minimum wage laws, you will lower their profits and make less rich corporations? Do you think that somehow the minimum wage corrects that disparity in who's getting the benefit of the production over the last like 100 years or 70 years?
It can.
It can? Is that what you said? Okay. And you think how do you think that would happen? How do you think the minimum wage could make an employer earn less other than, I guess, putting them out of business?
They make less profit, but stay open.
Or they lower their training programs, they cancel certain products, and if you're a monopoly like McDonald's, you can just add 2 cents onto all your burgers, make the customer pay for the increase in the wage, you make more money, and in fact, your business grows because you're the only business with the kind of economy of scale that can absorb a minimum wage increase. So you get less competition, you get the best of all low wage workers, and you get to start retaining people more than ever because they don't want to go because it's not an entry-level job anymore.
Yeah, all those are cans, and I think quite a stretch. Or
I'm sorry.
Those are all McDonald's what? Makes less, and we just raise up the minimum wage like many other countries do.
They're all what? Cans?
Yes, those are not definites. That's an interesting idea you have, and could possibly happen. Maybe, I don't know. Or
but that's what
McDonald's
the studies
just makes a little less, and people make a little more, and they spend money, and we're all happy.
You You really think McDonald's is just going to accept making a little less? They're not going to do all the things I just said to compensate for having a higher labor cost. You don't think they're going to adjust? They're just going to take less money, because it's pretty proven that that's exactly what they do. And in fact, since 1993, the Carden-Kruger papers that they've been putting out on the monopsony wage model that is used for most of the information that says things like that, in its own explanation, it says the reason that a monopoly restaurant in particular, because they were studying like McDonald's, Burger King, the reason within the papers that they would say is because a McDonald's is big enough to do everything I just said. I'm not making it up. It's from a paper that is based, that is used to explain the monopsony model in what industries it works. That particular model has been expanded to say what you're saying, that it does have a positive effect. And most economists will say, even Austrian school economists will say, well, of course, in a monopoly, you have all the power. You can make a lot of things work. But that doesn't mean that the minimum wage doesn't affect McDonald's the same way it does every other. McDonald's just can slide sliders so they keep their profits, and they make more profits because they put their competitors out, and they're getting the best of the low-wage workers. It's not made up stuff. That's the actual papers written for your side of the argument.
It's interesting. You always want to take my side of the argument when I don't agree with you. Don't worry about my side. If you want to post something, post something. McDonald's has increased in cost their entire existence. Since the day they were started, they've had increased in cost, and prices have gone up.
That happens to businesses.
And that needs to raise. It's very simple. And for you to say that, like, hey, inflation works here, and things go up here, and it's passed to the customer, and that's bad, but not labor. Can't pass the price of labor to the customer, but you can price the cost of the hamburger bun.
That's what I just said.
Raises, if the meat raises, all these
That's what I just said. That's what I
No,
just said. That is
no.
how you pass the cost on to the customer, is with those
That's
things.
How you can, first of all, can. Secondly, inflation has gone up 2% to 3% every decade. No matter what happens, it's always gone up. It doesn't go down. It goes up. There might be minor times it's gone down for a little bit, like when the 2009 crash happened, or something huge comes out that really does speed things up. And so inflation goes up, so wages should match, because a lot of other things are still going up. McDonald's, you can't use McDonald's as, you can't raise labor as a fear when we have no controls over what the grain costs and what the meat costs. Those all go up. It is what it is.
No,
yes, you raise the price of labor, and it does in a small fraction go to the customer. So be it.
They use futures markets to lock in the corn costs and food costs for years ahead of time. So no, it's not like each year they're coming in and going, dang it, we ain't got enough beef. A group that size has got its own beef produce plants. It knows 4 or 5 years ahead of time it's using futures to control the price so it stays low. It's the kind of power they use to stay on top. So that is not true.
You're talking McDonald's. You're talking one corporation. How about the small business then? Am I right on small business, or do you have some?
No, they're out of business. No, in this scenario, they're out of business. Remember, you said that too. They're out of business.
And have done the same thing for the last 60 years, raise prices. What about them?
Everybody has to raise prices in inflation.
Exactly, and that's why you have to raise minimum wage so people can afford prices.
No, that's why you got.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
If you want to index minimum wage to inflation, sure. But if there shouldn't be a minimum wage in the first place, it doesn't take away the fact that you're forcing people to work for a lower wage. So I get you. But also, this inflation only goes up. That's not true.
For the most part.
Inflation,
Definitely for decade to decade.
inflation recently, in like the last 70, 80, maybe 100 years, it's steadily gone up since the creation of the Federal Reserve and the constant increase of the money supply. But that is not the natural effect of inflation. That's why we have inflation and deflation and stagflation. There are many different, and to act like it's just an inflation land means you don't understand inflation, because as this inflation keeps going, we're going to turn it around the other side and we will have deflation, where prices start going down. That's a pretty natural thing to happen. And if you just don't believe in anything other than inflation, then I understand why a lot of this makes sense to you.
I absolutely did not say that. I told you in 2009 It went down. There's individual items that went down.
All right.
I told you it rarely goes down. And from decade to decade, it goes up. There are small items that have gone down, like I think the price of a TV's gone down pretty substantially in our lifetime. Price of computer, mostly electronics. Yeah, sometimes it goes down, but rarely. But from decade to decade and from year to year, it's a steady up, and minimum wage is not. Minimum wage needs to match that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think we're pretty dug in here. All right. Well, it's been about an hour. I see no resolve.
All right, cool.
But I'll get you more info if you want to do this again, and I can try to prove some of those no, absolutely nots wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll plan it. And then for everyone who might watch this, if you're interested, we're going to do it again next week. I'm not sure what day. I'll try to announce a little earlier in the week. I'm also hoping to have a second guest that is not Paul. We will see. We will see. It is in the works. But next
ask
week,
your friend Spencer.
Yeah, jeez. I might have him come on just to apologize.
I didn't even correct you. Sorry, Spence.
Next week, we'll be doing UBI, and then maybe we'll just be doing some serious follow-up videos on those two videos after that. We'll see. But we got to talk about election. That's some fun stuff. Oh, before we go, or no, I'll ask you later. No biggie.
I got a question for you about recent politics, and I'm actually curious. What do you think about the feds snatching people in Portland?
I think
and I don't know every detail on it, so.
I have seen 2 or 3 videos. I think there's only 2 videos. There could be more. But I've only seen 2 videos, and I think that's a mischaracterization. Depending on how it happened, you don't know what's going on. I think the, oh my God, these guys are unidentified part is just completely made up. Even in the videos people are complaining about, you can see their badge numbers and their patches. So that part I don't understand where that comes from, that they're unidentified secret police. They're all identified. So that part is kind of disappointing that they're just ignoring that. But something I heard from someone else, or I was watching a video, and somebody brought up, and I had to go back and watch the video again, that it's possible if you watch the guy's behavior, the main video we all see is the 2 cops in the 2 guys in camo get out of the minivan, and they slow walk up to somebody, tell him to put his hands behind his back. And that guy puts his hands up and goes, what? He puts his hands behind his back for them, and they gently take him to the van. And the whole time, it's the only time I've never seen anybody from Antifa really not struggling, turning around saying, "Here's my name." People were yelling, "What's your name? What's your name? We'll get you out, comrade." He ignored everybody and went quietly, and then wasn't arrested later. And I just couldn't help but feel like, okay, secret troops kidnapping people is wrong. Yes, but I don't think that's what I saw. I think I saw people being arrested once they're away from crowds, if anything, and not like they're just rolling up. And there were people attacking federal buildings. So if they had followed one or two people to get a leader or get someone they saw do something, and they had determined that there's no way we're going out in a stack of 4 or 5 to try to pull that person in while they're throwing Molotov cocktails and bricks. So we monitor you till we get you to your loan and we grab you and arrest you or question you or find out if that's you. But that one video in particular, I wouldn't be surprised if that was what Antifa complains about, a police plant. That sure looked like them picking up one of their own very gently, very nicely. He went without anything, and then he was released. Not that that's right or wrong. It just didn't seem like a kidnapping to me. And so then somebody else brought this up and said, I used to work in a police force. This is the way we picked up our confidential informants. They would know we were coming. We'd catch you on a corner. Right. And then you go, oh no. And so if you go rewatch the video and think about his behavior, which I did after I heard that, because I didn't think of it first time. The second time I watched it, maybe it influenced me because somebody said that. But once I watched it and went, yeah, you are so nonchalant, dude. You're almost happy to get in that van. You're not talking to the other protesters and telling them your name. You're not doing any of the normal I'm with you, comrades stuff that normally happens. So
yeah, that would make sense why there's only 2 or 3 incidents of it, because how many goddamn people did you have involved? That's why you rent a low-key, rent a van. You don't even do too much paperwork.
Right.
The guys in it are dressed, but like, you know, it's your guy, so you're not gonna like dress too much.
Right. You may have one bandana or something stupid that's your signal. And then they were all released. Nobody was arrested. And then they got to complain that said, boy, they just questioned me and didn't do anything. I was like, really? They just questioned you too? So the worst kidnappers ever. So I don't know. Let me just.
No, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I have doubt only because of what someone else said. So maybe that would influence the way I watched it the second time. But so I was waiting for more of it. Okay, who's getting kidnapped? And they still haven't interviewed anybody who was kidnapped that I know of to any extent, or had any charges or anything. What happened to them? The kidnap victims.
Yeah.
That seems serious.
If you were undercover, it's over.
Yeah, you're not.
As they wait outside.
Yeah, new department. New department. We followed you to the station, comrade. We're here. Ah, fuck.
All these
get them out of here.
All these little hippies outside screaming for you. Yeah, I'm blown.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's an interesting one. I like that. But I mean, it's one of those things where if you look at the evidence, what you just said actually makes a little more sense. And usually you add up the evidence, you'll find, I mean, usually, but you'll find the right thing.
Yeah, is it Occam's razor? Simplest answer is probably the truth.
Yeah. Don't, I forgot who it is.
Go back and watch the video. Go back and watch the video too. Now with that in mind, just, it's weird when you watch it after you hear that, you're like, oh, wow.
It's like when Jesse Smollett or whatever his name is. When you
Smollett.
first heard about that.
Juicy Smollett.
Yeah.
It's Juicy Smollett.
No. As soon as I heard that, I was like, no.
He's so lying.
No. You're coming out of Subway downtown and some good old boys attack you and put a necklace on you and run off. Like
I believed that. I even believed that.
Really?
I swear to you, I believe maybe because he was on his way to Subway, it made sense to me at 3 a.m. that a stupid fight happened in a Subway.
Okay.
Right? He said he got into an argument or something with them near Subway, and then they jumped him later or something. So that part, you know, I was like, oh, he talks shit. And they're like, oh, screw you, movie boy. Yeah. That I believed, and I thought, wow, why'd you have to go and make up all the other shit in that stupid little string? Why'd you do all that? But then when you found out it was the 2 brothers, The Nigerian
You know,
brothers. It was, which I'm going to stop saying, the two Chicago brothers. They're tired of people calling them the Nigerian brothers. They are Nigerian,
Oh, yeah,
their
good point.
parents,
Yeah.
but they're born here. They're Americans. They weren't born in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with one of them, and they said that. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, sorry, man. Not the Nigeria. The two Nigerian Chicago brothers who were born in America.
As soon as shit went bad.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, okay, yeah. And then you find out they've worked with him on the set before. One of them was his trainer, and you're like, oh, you messed up, Jesse.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have done that. Oh, well. All right, I gotta let you go.
All right, cool.
Wrap this up. Thanks again. I got a good little sweat going.
All right, cool. Then I'll try and get something to make my dome not so shiny.
All right, sounds good. I want to see a really cool hat. It'd be like your thing. You could be Paul, a hat guy. All right. Thanks again, man. And have a good night, and we will do this again. Take care.